right, welcome. My name is Brian. I am the director of e-commerce here at Oma's Pride, and I want you to meet.
Mohamed, aka the Logistics Monk. I'm excited to be on here with you today, Brian. I've heard so much about this amazing podcast, just going through LinkedIn and stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to it, man. We're gonna have a blast
Awesome.
today.
Awesome. Now, Logistics Monk, fill me in a little bit there. That's first of all, that's a great name, but fill everyone in what that means.
100%, brother. So I got my start. I work in logistics right now. So I've been in logistics maybe for about 6 or 7 years, in sales and operations. The last year and a half, I've actually moved on to SaaS, which is system as a software. We built a CRM based for logistics sales reps. So that's the logistics part, right? And then
Okay.
I was looking for it. I read Jay Shetty's book. I know, like Think Like a Monk and all that stuff. And this is before he got canceled. So mind you, the name was there before he got canceled. So I just took it upon myself to be, the monk, logistics monk. And for me, my mission is really service. And that's why I love this because like pets have a big pillar in my life with service. So I felt, you know what, let's just put that moniker together. And the reason why I came up with like this moniker to put it on is that I used to have my own podcast as well, that I just actually hopped off of, I think in November, and I was doing that for about 2 years straight. A
Awesome.
little burnout when doing it every single day. So yeah,
Sure.
excited to take a break.
No, that's great, man. That's great. Yeah. So, in regards to, some stuff that I saw on your LinkedIn, we often forget about, especially when we go to these shows, right? We often forget about the giving that goes in pet, right? And all the fundraising, all the efforts that are put behind the goodness in pet, right? The treats are great, food's great. There's a accessory, there's new technology coming out all the time. But when it comes down to it, something that resonates with us, right? So Oma's Pride, long story short, 4 generations long, started in the 1950s as a family poultry farm. Okay, so grandmother had a farm, right? Had thousands of turkeys on it, and we sold human food, turkeys, to local grocery stores in New England, throughout in and around New England. And there came to a time when she passed away, and we had a big account with a big grocery chain that I'm not going to mention, but we had a big turkey account for that grocery store chain. And the husband went to go renew our contract. And unfortunately, things didn't work out, right? So now company was about to go under, and they didn't really know what to do, right? So fast forward, this was in the 1990s. The second generation owner had a very sick dog, very, very sick. And the reason why there's a wolf behind me is she noticed that these wild wolves in her backyard were feeding on carcasses, animal carcasses. They were eating meat, things that you wouldn't really think about if your pet wasn't sick. And really at that time in the 90s, no one was really feeding raw, right? So
Yeah.
she's like, this is interesting. Well, we already have the human food element, right? So let's give my dog turkey necks, bones, all that sort of stuff. And next thing you knew, within 30 days, her dog Harley went from being very ill, almost passing away, to being a pup again, right? All within 30 days of switching to raw. And that's sort of the pioneer of Oma's Pride, and that's how we transitioned to who we are today. So made some family batch recipes and brought them to shows. People are like, what's going on? This old lady's like selling food out of a cooler. And people bought into it. We were the first company to commercialize raw pet food in the United States, right? So now where we are today is all due to her looking outside of her backyard window and seeing wolves feeding on some animal carcasses. But with that, the family value at Oma's Pride is always finding a way to give back. Where every Thanksgiving we try to do everything we can in regards to food insecurity in our state, in Connecticut. So we partner with the Connecticut Food Bank and Feeding America. And last year we helped feed 100,000 people.
Wow.
So that's something that we do yearly. It's something that like really drives us here. So when I was diving down your LinkedIn and the work that you do in regards to the money that you raise and the nonprofit that you work for, I wanted to like talk about that a little bit, how you got involved with that, what you guys do, where the money goes, and kind of give everyone a rundown.
Yeah, 100%. Well, first and foremost, like, to help out those families like during Thanksgiving and things like that, it's such an amazing feeling. And I think like charity is such a big pillar in life. There's one thing that I've kind of learned in life, Brian, is you never negotiate on charity. You do it from the goodness of your heart, and that's it. I'll make it short because my story's a little bit long how I kind of got into animal rescue. Basically, I got my first dog in like 2019. He was our office dog, and the person who got him, he was like, you know what, I got a brand new pup, and he was a 19-year-old kid, so he moved into the city. He was making some money. He's like, I'm gonna get a house, I'm gonna get a dog, and then he realized his numbers and all that stuff when it comes to sales, it was going down because he's taking care of a dog. So on a whim, we just adopted him, and he was my guy. His name was Raja, and then sadly, he tragically passed away in my arms, probably like a year and a half later. And before then, we were doing all the research and things like that. And we think it might have been the flea and tick medication, but that's a different story. But anyways, I went down through a spiral. I've never had pets in my life. I never had loss in my life. Knock on wood, my grandparents died when I was a kid, so whatever. My parents, knock on wood, they're all still around. So I went down through a spiral, and then somebody told me, "Hey, why don't you get into rescue?" So I went through two different rescues. Actually, my background was logistics. I was like, okay, what if I took a logistics focus mine to like how you guys do like your transportation of getting dogs to vets or getting medication and stuff like that. So Fetch and Release was the first rescue I worked with. Became their transportation manager and then left. I met one of my friends, which I work with right now at Brandless Rescue Goods, Tarika, while I was there. And she's like, look, Ryan, we want to help solve the problem. We sell merch. So human merch, I'm actually wearing one right now,
I
rescue
love it.
overbreeding.
Love it.
And what we do is that we sell merch and we donate 100% of it back to animal efforts. We did the money going, sorry, we sent the money back to like local rescues, but we realized that the money can only go so far, especially with you know this as well, Brian, that COVID dogs. Everyone got a dog during COVID, and then they're back at the shelters are full, like we're at capacity here. So we said, you know what, a lot of these dogs are getting imported from into Canada from like Mexico. So we partnered with a Mexican rescue, the Doggle Project. They're Funky Town in Puebla, an amazing rescue organization. And what we do is that we sponsor all the money. We sponsor spay and neuter clinics. So we'll go down like once a month and like sponsor it. And anybody who wants to come get their dogs or cats spayed or neutered, it's done for free. Like we cover the costs, and we see over 200 animals get spayed or neutered within that like 2-day process. So we want to kind of stop the problem. When I kind of go on TikTok and I see like the big issue in the States, like we don't necessarily have like dog shelters in Canada. Most of them are foster based. So whenever a rescue is going into a foster, so we want to stop that problem and sell some pretty cool merch with it. So our mission essentially is to see if we can stop that at the core issue, because the overpopulation of dogs is kind of an issue when they're coming to Canada or the United States as well.
That's incredible. That's a really cool story, man. I think and that just kind of goes back to, these are stories you don't really hear about, right? Which is why I'm glad we're having this conversation, because this is the stuff that needs to get out there more. I mean, at the end of the day, it's really cool when a new toy comes out, a new treat line comes out. That's all great, but this is the stuff that really matters, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing. That's awesome, right? I mean, that's really cool. And the merch is dope. I love the merch.
Okay, I'm gonna send you some stuff, man. We'll talk offline about that.
Yeah,
I just want to talk about this a bit because I thought it was really cool that you're saying that, and then I love having these conversations. I'm a big raw person. I got 3 dogs, one's a rescue and 2 a rehome.
yeah,
Raw for me, like, so I'm not sure if you're familiar, but we use, because I'm in Canada, we use Bold by Nature and
sure.
Big Country Raw.
Yeah,
You know what? For everybody out there, like being on Raw was the best decision we personally ever made with our dogs. It's like you said, the wolf, having that in the background, and then seeing like the owner and stuff like that, seeing like carcasses, things that people think are disgusting. Because when I tell people what I feed my dogs, they're like, "Ew, this is disgusting," all this stuff. But I'm like, oh my god, you should see their poops, you should see their coat, it's like perfect, right? So kudos to what you guys are doing, man. It's you guys are part of the solution.
yeah. No, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's an interesting conversation, right? When we think about like the commercialization of like companies in general has really caused the shift to kibble, right? Because years before kibble companies, that's what animals, dogs ate in the wild,
Yeah.
and moving it to like a for-profit. How can we make food that's not great, but we can make a big profit off of it, and sort of like trick the consumer into this is the standard. Um, reverse engineering that mindset has been super critical, right? For not only for us to acquire new customers, but get people that are raw. That's kind of gross or very intimidating, because often online we see, like, you see scientists, biology, everyone's talking about the in-depth positivity behind raw, but it comes across intimidating to the consumer, right? When they have
Yeah.
to start thinking about this percentage of organ meat, this percentage of muscle meat, this is how it affects this system versus this system compared to this. And you're like, whoa, this is, I have to learn this, and I have to pay like 2 or 3 times more for I'm all set. So like it's hard. The education piece behind raw to me is definitely the most important, crucial piece. It's not developing new recipes. It's not trying to reinvent the wheel. Like you see a lot of kibble-based companies, right? Where they'll throw buzzwords at it. They'll come out with a new line of kibble with different marketing tactics. There's really not a lot that needs to be developed within raw, but just the education piece of it behind it. Because those customers that we do get across the fence that are like, all right, I'll give it a try. Next thing you know, their 12-year-old golden retriever with arthritis, and that's been laying on the couch for the past 2 years, is now, chasing fly balls in the backyard. Right. So seeing that transformation definitely helps. And we like to break it down too, right? Like I have 3 kids. So I have a 4-year-old daughter who's turning 13 in her mind. She's nuts. Like a teenager. I have a 2-year-old son, and then a newborn. So house is chaotic, absolutely chaotic. It's like sometimes it's like you ever seen the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
Yes, my friend.
Yeah. It's essentially like that at home 24/7. But relating it for those that have children or those that have spouses, and you go to the grocery store and buy food. Obviously, we're already programmed to know that, wow, this box I'm picking up has 413 ingredients in it, right?
Yeah.
Versus, hey, this is just broccoli and chicken, right? So we're used to that on the human food side of it, right? And we're not so used to it on the pet side of it. And that's where the transition's slowly happening year over year, which is good to see. But yeah, I mean, totally spot on, man. I mean, this is it's really cool to be a part of it, because you're fighting for something, not only to make a living, like I'm doing this to make money for my family, but doing it in a way that I know is for a good cause or a good reason. And that to me means a lot,
Yeah, and it's cool that, like you said, it's that purpose driven too, right? And I think for us, the reason why we decide, well, it's another funny story. So I got a golden retriever as well, and I took a business trip, and he's so attached. If anybody has any golden retrievers out there, you guys know there's Velcro dogs, and then there's golden retrievers. Like they're super Velcro. So he was on kibble, and oddly enough, when I took a 2-day trip, my wife was home, and he stopped eating. He didn't eat for those 2 days, anything like that. And even when came back, he stopped eating. And my sister's dog, she has a little cockapoo, and she's been on raw from her breeder, who's an ethical breeder. She's like, you know what? You have to keep these dogs on raw. They're like the best and stuff like that. So we're like, you know what? Let's try it. Took a little food. He clobbered it up right away. And you're right. Like, while the cost might be 2-3 times like the amount of, let's say, kibble, I just can see myself going back to it. I did my annuals with my dogs like 2 weeks ago, and our vet is like, oh my God, like these guys are so good. Like everything is good to them. Like Jackson, my golden retriever, he can lose a little bit of weight, but other than that, like, the teeth benefits of, instead of using greenies, like there's so many chemicals in there. There's so many stuff in there, like 40 greens, like you're talking about. And then I'm like, hey, let me just go grab a turkey neck, one ingredient.
Yes.
Here, go have
Yes.
fun for a couple hours, right? So
It's so worth the investment. So worth it. It's almost like, we relate, especially on our social media, we do a lot of like human to dog comparisons, right? So like, what if a human did that? What if a human ate like this, right? And it's almost almost like when I bring my kids, they go I think it's 6 months now. My wife is head of scheduling in the house, so I'm not really I'm not involved in that. But when we do bring them to the doctor, right, it's almost like if we were to feed them garbage every day, right? And it's like, hey, there's this issue they have, right? They need this surgery. They need this. It's like, what you're feeding them McDonald's cheeseburgers every day? Yeah, of course there's going to be issues that happen. And that's really like the main focus when you have human issues. And there's no reason why that shouldn't be treated the same for your pets, right? Where it's like the issue is now, which doesn't happen in the people side of it, is doctors aren't controlled by food companies like vets are controlled by food companies in the pet space. And that's the biggest, that's going to be the hardest issue to overcome hurdle wise on the education piece of raw. Is there's people that call in almost daily My vet said my dog can't have your product, or my vet recommends this by this
Mm,
company who owns the vet, right? So there's a lot of tricky elements behind being a dog owner, where you don't necessarily have to worry about that when you have a kid, right? Like every pediatrician that we've gone to has been great, no complaints, and they're not like pushing fast food down my kids' throats, but we treat it differently in the pet space because they're just a dog, right? And I think that's the biggest hurdle to get over these multi-billion dollar companies that also control a multi-billion dollar health channel, that we think as a consumer we have to listen to the health side of it, but they're controlled by the food side of it. So it's like this like never ending cycle that's slowly starting to break.
yeah.
um, but until that actually disperses, it's gonna be an uphill battle for sure.
It is, and I think what helps with that as well, Brian, is that we live in a society or a generation right now where everyone's curious. You're like,
Yeah.
no one's trusting, like, and maybe it's a good or bad thing, right? But like, nobody's trusting whatever they're being told. They want to fact check it themselves,
Yeah.
right? So I know for like, I've had, I'm a part of like a little group, like our community group, and for our dogs, and they all get together and they always ask me questions about these things. I'm like, well, you can go read that book, Forever Dog. That was a great book. That was a great education for me. Read and do what works for you. I've been lucky that our vet is actually a really progressive vet. He's like, you know what? Do what you want. Like when I said we're going to Raw, he's like, okay, well, there's a couple things, and let's just make sure, be careful, and all these things, make sure it's balanced, all that stuff. But I was never ever told no. And then when I was excited for that yearly checkup, he was like, yeah, these guys are doing great. Even though full transparency, he's sponsored by Hills. You go into his vet office, everything is Hills Science, and they are a good program. Like they are completely great. But we live in a society, like I mentioned, that we can go and do the research ourselves. We
Yeah.
can go provide that ourselves, or we have great companies like yours who have like the full out dinners, or like have the full out meals, so that you can take the guesswork of, oh my god, I need to put some more organ meat, or I'm not having enough bone, or am I even having enough fruits and veggies? It's just like, here's your foundation. Start with this. If your dogs start with this, they're going to be fine. Then add or subtract or do some fun stuff with it. And then, because sometimes I go on TikTok and I'm like, well, damn, that meal that person made for their dog is like a $50 meal. I'm like, God bless, man. I'm here eating craft dinner, and
Yeah.
like from that end, right? But we do live in a curious society, so I think it's pretty cool.
It's so true though. I mean, it's a time when, the first thing that we do when we see news, it's like, oh, let me look that up, right? Like we always look anything up. And then also the power of social media, like you're talking about, is something it's great and bad, right? It's good and bad. You see things that trend and things that go viral that you're trying to be convinced is great when it's not. And then on the flip side of it, you can take something like switching from kibble to raw and going viral in that direction and influencing a numerous amount of pet owners that, oh wow, you know what, I've seen a lot of this on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook. I think it's worth taking a shot at. So that's something that we try to leverage and grow our social media accounts and channels, is utilizing that education component behind our content, because that is the number one channel where people go to for information, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
Google or YouTube or Instagram or Facebook, no one's reading books like they used to. No one's um, times are changing. Like in the consumer's philosophy and learning process has changed. So I think that does make it a little bit easier in order to, really get the point across with raw, you
Yeah, and what I
know?
find really great with Raw, and I'm pretty sure you guys are doing it as well, is that you guys are educating the retailers. You guys go in there. The retailer that we go into, like we only go to that one retailer, and they
Mhm.
have like freezers and stuff like that, and they're always giving us updates. Like they're always willing to help you. Like they're like, I see this new product on their website. What do you think about it? Do
Yeah.
you see your dogs eating that stuff? And I know they have the product knowledge from like the kibble and all that stuff. Like I do want to make it a point to say, like, we're not going to say like all kibbles bad. Like teach their own. Whatever works for your dog. For me, I want my dogs to live forever, right? So I'm gonna look at like the
Yeah.
facts and things like that. And if we can, you were talking about being humans, and we look at the ingredients. Well, the number one diet or lifestyle that has been the best by doctors over year is Mediterranean diet. And when you look at something like that, it's like really good fats, really good protein, a couple of carbs and things like that. And these are sustainable things. So why can we take that approach with our dogs? And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with when you said it's just a dog, you know. And I think,
Yeah,
I don't know how we get out of that mentality, but it's like you talk to someone who doesn't have a dog, right? And they're like, it's just a
I
dog.
don't get it.
Because
Yeah.
I was that person too. I'm pretty sure maybe you were, if you didn't grow up with
Yes.
dogs, you'd be the same person.
Yes.
But then you get a dog and it's completely different.
Yep. Spot on. I mean, it's true. And I think now we're seeing people treat their pets like part of the family. We're
Yeah.
not necessarily saying people didn't years ago, but I think it's more so now than it ever was, right? So that's a crucial part of it. In the pet stores near you, are you a online guy, or are you like, do you like going in the stores, or do you like getting everything delivered?
So I
Mix?
like to go in store, and here's the reason why. I've
Yeah.
been working from home for like 6 years, so I need to see people, man. I
Yeah.
honestly just see my dogs, and like I rarely go out. So I before here I actually went to go pick up our food, but I do take a look at like their websites to see what they're doing and stuff like that. But we built a relationship. Shout out to Sarah from Global Pet Foods. We've built such a great relationship with her, to a point that she keeps us educated. If she hasn't seen us for come in like a couple weeks or so, she'll give us a call to see how everything's going. But you need to be I feel like you need to go to retail. I know there's the delivery options, like we can get our stuff delivered to the home, and yes, it might be more convenient, but I think that human element, like that is the expert. Just like you being like the director of e-commerce, I would come to you to get your advice, right? I wouldn't want to read a course or read a book or something. I want to come to you, right? So just like with the retailer, I want to go to her, see what she's thinking, what is she hearing from other people like using the product and things like that.
That's great to hear. No, I love that too. And I think we use a few different folks out there. We have our own sales team that's getting us into independent pet stores, getting our product out there. We work with Packer Mellum, who's been great educating our product through stores. PFX carries our product, but I think like the retail shift in most, at least like from what I've seen and what I've like studied, is the retail shift from retail brick and mortar sales to e-commerce is a little bit different in pet in regards to, I like to tell people, if you were able to bring your laptop and walk around big Best Buy, and the employees of Best Buy, every time you walked in there to buy something for your computer, checked your computer out, was talking to you about your computer. Hey, you should probably get this. Like this camera's not great. I'm looking at your camera right now. You should probably get this. Same element that is with our pets. That's not transferable in any other thing that we buy as consumers. So when you're able to bring your dog into a store, interact with other pet owners, with the store owner, and you're able to have that open line of communication with your animal there, that doesn't exist in any other brick and mortar retail, which is why I think the independent pet space is something that is not going to go away anytime soon. I mean, obviously there's big pet brands and chains out there, but at the end of the day, the more and more we see the consumer realizing that especially the healthy food and raw side of it, feeding increases, that's going to start increasing traffic to the more and more to the stores. So I'm the same way. I love going into the stores. Obviously, there's times when convenience is a factor, right? Where most of our customers don't just order online; they're also going into stores weekly or biweekly or monthly. But does that make sense? How it's sort of, have you like thought about it that way?
Well, it's a great idea. Like, and I've never thought about that in that aspect, but it's so true because let's look at a different side of like pet ownership, which is like grooming, right? We all know that like we can learn how to groom and stuff like that, and it'll cost us a lot cheaper. But that peace of mind to like send them to the groomer, and then you get a couple hours off for yourself to kind of do whatever you want or anything like that. And I think when you're talking about that Best Buy experience and that shopping experience, like you're right, you bring your dog into the thing, they can get a dog bath while they're there. They take a look at new treats, and I don't know if you're the same way, Brian, but I know people's dogs' names more than I know their actual names, like the owners' names.
Yeah.
Like I will be like, "Hey, how's Coda doing, man?" Or "How's this one doing?" I'm like, and I'll tell
Yes.
my wife, I was like, "Holy shit, what's that person's name again?" Like, what? Well, so I think just by that, everybody loves dogs, and I think a big boom. I don't know if you've been following like the whole like Dave Portnoy from Barstool Sports and
Yeah, with
Miss
Miss
Peaches.
Peaches. Yes,
Yeah, Miss Peaches, man.
Miss
It's just like
Peaches.
I'm a huge fan of Miss Peaches, and I went
Yes.
and spent a whole bunch of merch on that stuff. And I think it's that education piece, right?
Yes.
Because like like you said, dogs are becoming part of the family. Like I'm Raise your hand if you're guilty if your dog was in your Christmas photos that you sent out to people. Hella guilty, right? So just coming back to your question about, we do need those independent retailers because they are the backbone of education, right?
Yes.
Like, like we
Yes.
were talking about the vet, you were mentioning so the vet. I knock on wood, because my dogs are on raw, I only go to the vet once a year, and that's for their annuals. We
Yeah.
haven't had any
Great.
accidents or any sickness or anything like that. So I can't rely on that one piece of information for the whole year, right? Things
Sure.
change.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, and what we've noticed too, at least the stores that we're in, and I think it's true throughout all the stores, is that's another area where employees feel like they have a purpose and they're doing good, right, on a daily basis. They're not working at some insurance job, punching numbers all day. Like people that they interact with, they truly want to help. And they're incredible educators. I think there's not a better educator in the pet food space than retail store owners. They're the most up to date on new products, new ingredients, new studies that are found, whether it's in lab or trial, that they can talk to the consumer about, the in-store customer. And yes, it's easy for us to generate an email or create a social media reel for it with any new information that comes out. But when you walk into a pet store and the owner is just that cares not more about your dog, the same about your dog as you do, it's a really good feeling when you're able to go in the stores, and that's what I've seen. At least the stores that we work with, they're all fantastic like that. And what in Canada, right? So you've been in Canada for your whole life, or have you been there
My whole life.
recently?
Yeah, born here. Born and raised
Oh,
here for 35 years, yeah.
oh, awesome. In Canada, at least to my understanding, sort of made the raw switch a little bit sooner than the US, right? That market sort of opened up a little bit more earlier on than it did in the US. So companies, like BCR, et cetera, up there, they've expanded in a way which is amazing. Where I'm seeing Canada, there's more dog owners per capita that feed raw than the United States, and it's great to see that start to transition down here south of the border. I would love to send you some of our food, but we can't. We can't
Yeah.
ship to Canada. Can't ship. You can ship some crazy stuff across the border. God forbid you ship some raw food. The
They're
whole
like,
country
"No."
goes nuts.
Yeah, there we go, man. I've dealt with those customers, but no, you're right, man. You're honestly right. A lot of people, they are becoming more educated, and the thing with, like, since I work in the rescue world, it's weird to say this because, like, you look at the people who are in rescue and who rescue dogs or who even adopt or get dogs from ethical breeders, they all kind of look the same, or they kind of all have that ideal client profile of like what they do, what they like, and what their wellness that they look for. And a lot of us are, we're looking at our diets a lot better. And one thing I remember, when I was making 30 grand a year in logistics, and I started to make a little bit more money in commissions, my manager sat me down one day and he's like, what, as you make more money, you're gonna be looking at the organic stuff more when you're at the grocery. You're like, I'm gonna be looking at the stuff as fuel, right?
Yeah,
And for us, when I talk to dog owners, like, like, it feels like there's a recall on like kibble and stuff like that every single time. Like I remember the same community chat I was saying, they were talking about the Purina one, I think it was, or something like that a couple weeks ago, and like dogs dying and stuff like that. And I'm just reading that unbothered, right? So I don't have to like look at these things. I think for all of us here, we have that opportunity that is accessible. And I mentioned it earlier in the conversation. BCR and your company as well, you guys make it so easy for anybody to do it. And I think that's where it is. You want to take that path of least resistance. So like,
yeah,
oh my God, well, I got to measure out this, like even measuring out, like, or even putting the right vitamins, because people think that, BCR or other companies, you just give them like the dinners, but then you got to look at omega 3s. It depends how deep you want to get into it as well.
sure,
Like, the
sure.
quail eggs and like the coconut oil and saffron and all that stuff. But, at the end of the day, you can, when you could feed your dog something and you see a legit overnight like change, that's the biggest testimonial. Because
Yes.
from us, like, we all know, and TMI for everybody who's not a dog owner, but those dog poops, they're disgusting, man, when they're on kibble. It's all filler. It's disgusting, man. I walk and I see them all the time. But then like when, like with your dogs are being fed raw, like dogs are what, like maybe this for like an 80-pound dog, and you're like, okay, I'll take that.
Yeah.
That means they're not drinking as much water because they get
Yes.
the hydration, right? So when you could see the fruits of your labor like right there. And I don't have kids yet, so I know you got like an amazing household with kids, and congratulations, by the way, on the
Oh,
newborn
thank
and
you.
everything going
Thank you.
that for you, Brian. But when you can see your kids as they're growing up, you're like, you can probably take a look at talk to your wife and be like, Man, we're really proud, man. You know,
Yes.
we did something really, really good.
100%, 100%. And it's so true. I mean, that, because I always relate everything back to humans, but if you had diarrhea every day, you'd be like, dude, something's wrong. Like it's been going on for years. And that obviously that issue would be resolved a lot, a lot quicker than it would be for a pet. But there's so many benefits that we see, not only in our dogs here, but our customers. And it's really cool hearing those stories where especially the older dogs, where it's great, where a lot of people I'm noticing are getting into raw because they're elder dogs. They're using it as a last resort option, right? And then when they get a puppy years later, or a rescue, whatever the case may be, they're like, okay, well, this just helped my 12-year-old dog live till 15 or 16. And then they start their next dog, as early on as possible. So even though it is for some folks a last resort, kind of throw some paint at the wall and see if this works. It's really, really cool to hear the stories like that. And I think the more and more we can showcase that, and the more and more people talk about it, obviously the more it gets out there, and people start to realize it. But it's really, really cool to hear.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. And with the growth of the podcast, man, it's just going to be another educational tool. So kudos to you, man, for starting this up. And like I said, I'm really honored and fortunate to meet you today and have this discussion with you, because, like you said, these are discussions that are happening behind closed doors. And hey, we need to kind of bring a little bit more awareness to it.
No, I appreciate all that. It's honestly one of those crazy ideas. I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to do it. So it's something that I'm just running with. And hopefully, like you said, more and more awareness gets out there, more and more people connect. Right. So eventually everyone that's been on this can now connect and have their, input here, their connections. Hey, why don't you do this? So sort of create a community that's outside of the shows. Right. So that's it's been great. I think it's something that is obviously, like you mentioned, you did it for 2 years. It's a lot of work. So I'm doing this during my workday, scheduling things out. But it's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. I really, really appreciate you coming on, telling your story. And then before we go too, if someone wants to buy some merch, so I'm going to drive them. We're going to post the link when we post this, and I'll post clips of this too. I'm a big short guy. So obviously people, listen to full blown podcast, but I love 90, 60-second reels with the juice of this. You know what I mean? So when those get posted along with this, I want to drive people to that, because I think that's really dope, and the apparel's dope.
Oh, thanks, bro. Thank you so much, man. So it's Brandless Rescue Goods .com. Take a look at us. We have some really, really cool merch for dog. Like we said, it's merch for humans, and we make some pretty cool stuff. And yeah, shoot me over your address. I want to send you some stuff as well, brother.
Yeah, that'd be great, man. Well, listen, it's been a pleasure. I really, really appreciate it. Yeah, and we'll be in touch, and stay tuned. We're rocking and rolling. I really appreciate it.
All right, take care, everybody. Thanks
Take
for having
care.
me out.
Have a good one.